Welcome to the Marshall Pruitt Podcast, your week in IndyCar interview show. And who do we have? Famous race car driver, illustrious team owner. You know, got someone who doesn't qualify for either of those categories. Nonetheless, one of my favorite folks in the IndyCar paddock for a really long time. Also realized, Brian Simpson, it's time for folks to get to know you a little bit better. Back in the day, you were heckled by the mayor of Hinchtown, James Hinchcliffe, with a little podcasty thing he was doing as, I guess, super producer Brian, but also bleepity bleep producer Brian. Folks have known you in and around this universe of IndyCar within the paddock, largely through the creativity that flows out of that beautiful brain of yours and a great tribe that you have assembled. So know that there's been a pretty cool evolution going on, Brian, with you in the business you've been in centrally with our two-time IndyCar champ, our newest Indy 500 winner, Josef Newgarden, under the Dream Digital banner. There's some pretty cool stuff that's been happening there for you and your creative team and some new things happening. So I said, you know what? Want to write about it, of course, but want to have you on the podcast so folks can learn a little more about you, because I think they'd be surprised to learn how much of the content that they see from some of their favorite drivers on the good old YouTubes and the Facebooks and the Twitters and tweeters and TikToks and whatnot comes from your creative team. So let me say a quick thank you first to our partners at the Justice Brothers, TorontoMotorsports.com, Cooper Tires, and Discount Tire, and then say, Brian, let's talk about what's happening here. What's coming in 2024 that's brand new? Pretty impressive stuff, but also, as we see in a lot of relationships, this long-standing business relationship you've had with Josef under the Dream Digital banner that you've helped to create, also reached a point where you said, you know what? We're going to keep going, but we're going to branch off and do things on our own.
First and foremost, wouldn't be in this position if, Josef hadn't taken a risk on me, 6 years ago, and talked me out into leaving my job at IndyCar and come to work for him. And, ultimately the trust he put in me to start Dream and branch out and work with other drivers and teams and sponsors. And so, we're in a really cool spot, and we wouldn't be there without the support that he's given me over the last 6 years. But we're moving on. We're going to go do things separately. I'm excited because, my client list beyond Josef is going to stay the same. And most importantly, my team is going to stay the same. We're going to be a different name. So Dream Digital is not going to be a thing anymore, but really excited about our new name, which is going to be Stillhouse. I think we're positioned to do some really cool stuff here in the future. And a lot of this wouldn't be possible without the group that I have around me, including my team and, my wife and family and everything. So,
don't forget your dog. Yeah, you love that dog.
We adopted a new dog. His name is Arthur. He's awesome. But very lucky to be in this spot, and, really excited about what we've got kind of coming up.
So Stillhouse, it's an interesting name. What's behind it? Because it is not motorsports videos and photos are awesome, and it's not we're super extra creative.com. It says a lot, but I guess it could be interpreted in a variety of different ways. Where did you come up with? How did you come up with Stillhouse? And does that represent you and your team of amazing artists?
So, when we got to this point where we, made the decision that we were going to rebrand and change our name, I didn't want to do it in a vacuum and, not have the participation from my team. And, obviously they're super creative people, so I wanted them to contribute to that. So I kind of gave everybody about a week to come up with some ideas and come to the table. And, we, as a collective group, come up with a decision, and we landed on Stillhouse. And, anyone who knows me personally, or maybe even via Twitter or social media, I like whiskey. I'm a bourbon guy. So, that spoke to me a little bit. It's obviously a Stillhouse is a is a building where they distill whiskey. But, what spoke to me a little bit more about that is, distilling, obviously the most common definition for it is making spirits, right? But, ultimately, if you look at some alternative definitions for it, it's the process of extracting like the essential elements or making the most pure elements out of another element. And I think that's, as a group, what we do. I mean, ultimately we want to try to create the most pure, perfect, shiny, awesome content to tell the stories or deliver the message or, highlight a moment. And so, I think of us as distillers in a certain extent. And that's kind of where we landed with Stillhouse and stuck with it. And, thankfully my boy Barry Cantrell is a tremendous graphic designer, and we let him run with the name, and he came back with some logos, and we were pretty excited about it, so we stuck with it.
So let's talk about a couple things. We'll get to some of those amazing folks you just mentioned who are part of the team, but where I have appreciated you for a long time in your former role, it started at IndyCar, and I've always mislabeled whatever the heck your title was, and I think it moved around a bunch, head of digital communication, I don't know. But you, I would say more than anyone else that comes to mind, you are centrally responsible for taking IndyCar out of the, we're going to go photocopy that thing to you, see, and we're going to fax you, communicate. It was like, no. We'll still do the things that are necessary to facilitate communications and promotions and whatnot of our series and work with the media however they need. But, boy, social media, digital content creation, this is really, truly, it's the wave of the future. Granted, it had already been in existence for a good while and being used by some other series. But you, I always think back as really the agent of transformation for IndyCar in that communications side of the building that said, hi, DVDs are cool, Blu-rays, the wave of the future too. But guess what? Digital, using our phones, communicating through social media. This is the forefront of what we have to do. And you are unrelenting in that mission. You tell me about that side for what you've done, Brian, because not only did you do that on the series side, but you, and there are some other agencies as well, like yours, who provide these services in the IndyCar paddock and IMSA and otherwise, the primary areas you and I float within, where there's this more individual, personalized level, where you go, a Josef Newgarden has a very active and powerful team behind him creating original content, whether it's Bus Bros or whatever videos it might be, and run down your list of clients, Jack Harvey and IMSA, Robert Wickens, where so many folks are accustomed to throughout the day looking at the social media feeds of their favorite drivers or teams. And what you've done and your team have done for many years is be the actual creative content side that's supplying this new kind of personalized service for drivers and teams. You've kind of spanned both sides. You talk about that because you've really been a pretty big player in helping to amplify this in the worlds of open wheel and sports cars.
I mean, I don't think I can take all the credit, certainly in the IndyCar growth and expansion into that area. I got very lucky in that I arrived on the scene in IndyCar when a very smart person was in a leadership role. You know him very well, Daniel Incandela. He was one of my first bosses, and he really was a big proponent of pushing in this direction. And it was something that I agreed with and obviously bought into. But most importantly, he trusted me to kind of just pick up and run and push boundaries and, run into things and maybe flip some tables over and maybe accidentally start a fire here and there and things like that. And, that trust is honestly a theme that I've had through my career, and having great people around me that have enabled me to kind of push things to a certain extent. But, I think when I arrived, the pieces were all kind of there to start to make this kind of digital transformation happen at IndyCar, but they weren't necessarily assembled. And Daniel was instrumental in helping assemble that and helping me assemble it and understanding how to assemble it. And, then he left IndyCar and went into kind of software corporate world and moved on to some other things, but always stayed on as my mentor and gave me a lot of advice. But the biggest thing that I've always recognized in this space and kind of through this journey is, you can't be afraid to take risks. You can't be afraid to push the boundaries a little bit. But the one thing that he always told me was, if you can't measure it, you can't do it. And so we have to be able to know if something was a success or a failure, and you can't just be shooting in the dark. So, while we take a lot of shots, not all of them hit the target, right? But you at least know what does and what doesn't hit the target. And so, looking at my time at IndyCar and the things we were able to do, obviously everybody remembers the things that worked really well. There were plenty of times where things did not work super awesome. But, I'm proud of the work that I did while I was there and the work that our team did while we were there and the corner we kind of turned in trying to be leaders in the digital space. And, ultimately that experience there informed me and educated me a lot in how I wanted to move forward in my career. And, I wasn't necessarily expecting to leave IndyCar. I was maybe approaching a point of burnout to a certain extent, but I think everybody has that happen at times in their career, and certainly in times in the IndyCar season where you hit the end of the season and you're like, man, this has been a long year. I'm not sure I want to keep doing this anymore. But then everybody gets to January and they're ready to go again. But, Josef called me and offered me a job, and it was a new challenge and something different that I wanted to do. And so I leapt at that opportunity, and that led to a lot of phone calls from drivers I'd worked with while I was at IndyCar, asking me if I could help them with things, or, they needed this project done, or who, this content created, or ideas for social media. And, I turned to Josef after the first year I worked for him and just said, hey man, like, perfectly happy with the way things are right now, but, there may be an opportunity here to build a business just based on all these phone calls I'm getting. If we don't want to do that, that's fine. But I think there's an opportunity here. So we took a shot at it and started Dream. Josef obviously was our first client and partner. And then, Jack Harvey was our second client. And, from there on, we grew and, worked with Ed Carpenter Racing, with Robert Wickens, Scott McLaughlin, Meyer Shank Racing, Alexander Rossi, James Hinchcliffe, James Rowe, kind of a smattering of people, and then a ton of sponsors and corporate groups and things that are involved in motorsports. But the main thing for me in all this, as we were heading forward and taking on all these different clients, is, it all has to be authentic. And I think that's a huge piece of being successful in digital and marketing, and particularly in branding, and especially when it comes to athletes, is you can't create cookie cutter content for, 6-7 IndyCar guys on the same weekend, because it'll end up all looking the same, right? And
I want a slow-mo shot of the track signage on entry to the track, then some sort of slow-mo flag waving in the air, then a slow-mo shot of them climbing into the... I know what you mean, because again, as a consumer and also a creator of these things, I do kind of chuckle where I'm like, okay, the 2-minute and 20-second YouTube/X video that is pretty much the same dang thing with terrible audio and someone talking inside the transporter, but instead of a wireless lav or whatever, you're just getting all the ambient noise of the generator, and you can be like, they're just chef's kiss. So yes, to your point, I appreciate the fact that while having many clients, you are constantly looking for ways. You are one of few people, again, another thing I've appreciated about you for a long time, you are one of few people who are painfully aware and painfully afraid of conformity, repetition, and template mindset. And so it's like, oh, who's going to call me out for the cliche? You've always got that. And I'm not saying there's no slow motion of a flag or getting into a car. But again, But instead of it being 7 of those per day or whatever for the clients, and they all look the same, I appreciate the fact that you're always like, you are a great critic of your own content in your mind before it's even been created. And again, it's a great sensibility.
I appreciate that. I will admit it is real easy to get into, a point in the year where everything starts to feel and look the same. And, I think that's when I start to get nervous. I also, have a healthy sense of self-doubt to a certain extent, which I think keeps people motivated to keep pushing, keep working. I'm always a little worried that I'm screwing something up. So, but I think that authenticity, whether it be in, creating the content or the music selection for videos, things like that, it's all that stuff goes into making sure that the content you're creating for each of these drivers or teams or sponsors is uniquely them. And it's something that they're proud to put out and showcase, and, ultimately feels like it's coming from them, even though it's obviously been, highly produced and shot on high-end cameras, and they can't shoot themselves when they're driving and things like that.
Let's talk about a couple other things, Brian. So I am a weird, I guess, entity within the general media space insofar that I don't do one thing. And I you probably come across a lot of folks who do one thing. Might be a writer, might be a photographer, might be whatever. But I'm fortunate to be someone who pretty much from the onset of this new media career in mine in 2006 or so, have done the reporting, been a videographer, little filmmaker, whatever it might be, photographer as well. Get to know those who are really amazing in those various spaces. And in your case, you have Barry Cantrell that you mentioned. And we love him. We accept the fact that, he will in public wear a Tennessee Titans hat. He's brave. We support his bravery, but he is all kinds of awesome. One of the great, not good, great motor racing photographers, young photographers. In particular, we see him again a lot in IndyCar now, but as a deep NASCAR background, you can send him anywhere. But for so much of what we get to see of his work, phenomenal open wheel photography, and then just another layer of insane talent in Alex Wong, where it's just like, I hate you because you're not supposed to be able to be this good, damn it.
Yeah.
Where we look at Camden Thrasher, for example, who primarily focuses in the racing world in sports cars. Wong is a bit, Camden's a unicorn. We all accept that guy's not from Earth. He's from outer space. That talent he has cannot be quantified by human measurement. I look at Wong in a similar sense in IndyCar, where it's like, geez, your eye's just amazing. And that's no disrespect to others. IndyCar has hired some great folks. Joe Skabinski, Chris Owens, they're phenomenal. And you and I, again, can rattle off some other names. Folks listening here might not have a clue as to who they are, but there are plenty of good photographers in IndyCar media centers. Very few I would refer to as great. You've been fortunate to assemble and build a tribe with some great, great talent supporting you. You, on the video side, have been shooting, editing, producing, and outputting phenomenal video content forever. Talk a little bit about the team, because I know we're mainly discussing this kind of branching out onto your own and whatnot. And that's phenomenal, but I'm always giving flowers to your team. And it's also probably not a coincidence, Brian, that, you get to race event X. It's common for whomever's in charge of that media center to put down little placards with who's going to sit where. It's not uncommon for me to grab mine, rip it off of the table, and go sit somewhere near your team, because it's just such an enjoyable group. But I also know I'm sitting next to, like, holy cow, these people are so inspiring. But tell me about this team that you have behind you, because they just deserve our flowers at all times. And people tell you that from the videos or the photos that are outputted on a daily basis.
Yeah, I said this earlier, but I'm very, 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 very lucky and incredibly thankful for the group around me. Alex and Barry, and I don't want to forget Sean Gritzmacher, who's he's been a part of my team since I started in IndyCar. They're three of my best friends. They're wildly talented. The thing I learned long ago with those guys is you don't need to do much managing. It's they know what the mission is, and stay out of the way and let them go create. And they always come back with unbelievable things. And the stuff that the thing that I love the most about all three of them is, we were talking about kind of that repetitive nature and how things start to feel cookie cutter over time. And especially as you get late into a season, you're doing the same thing every weekend for months on end. And, racetracks all start to kind of look the same. Not to these three guys. Like, they're always trying to figure out something new to do or something crazy to do or hatching up harebrained ideas. And, not every single one of them works, but when they do, it's just stunning. And I'm honored that they put their trust in me to work for me and be a part of this business. But they are world class. I mean, Alex Wong does things that don't make sense to me with a camera, and I've tried to pry knowledge out of him to make myself somewhat better than mediocre in terms of photography, and I just don't understand what he does.
Is he like a photography Terminator from the future? Is he like a T5000 model?
It would make more sense if he's a time traveler. It would all make a little bit more sense to me if he was a time traveler. But
and you also mentioned Grits, so his on-track work, phenomenal. Again, same thing. But sending Sean to pit lane with the instruction of get some candid photography and what he returns with. I don't know if it's because he's 1'3". I don't know if it's because he's, a compact person and he sees angles that none of us can find. I know that's not it, but like Grits as well, where you go, okay, you have this team where you go, okay, anything we need. And here's the other thing too, maybe you can speak on this. You've been to St. Petersburg event 10 times, 20 times, I don't know. Name all the tracks we go to. If you are wandering out to corners with photography or video equipment, you've been to those corners a trillion times. Inside corner, outside corner, trailing shot, oncoming, maybe even overhead. There comes a point where it feels like, Brian, kind of running out of ideas. You're like, okay, yep. And that you hate that because you're like, no, I'm in the creation department, but it feels like I'm cooking up the same old meal because I've been here so many times. I've run out of new ideas. That's a big roadblock for anybody and everybody, especially someone like yourself who has a creative agency in charge of doing new and different and unique things. Yet your team is seemingly always able to go, normally I stand here to get this killer shot that I love. And I don't know why, but I feel like I need to take 14 steps to the left. And so it's the same general area, but whoa, the light is hitting the arrow screen or the this in a different way. And the glint coming off of our driver's helmet is the constant search for things that are new, slightly different, just something where you go, wow, beautiful. And you got to do that again next year and find something else and something else. You guys have been particularly adept at that as well, which is just another hallmark of phenomenal folks in their particular industry. Yeah,
I mean, those guys, the level of preparation that they put into getting into a race weekend is crazy to me. And it's been eye-opening and positive for me to be around it, just to understand their thought processes when they approach a series of sessions over the course of 3 days. And at the racetrack we've been to 100 times that hasn't changed shape or anything. I think you look at Alex, and I give him a hard time for it, but he spends time watching onboards from cars heading into event weekends to try to get ideas for different places to see different things. And they're both looking, all three of them are looking at, sun calc and trying to figure out where light's going to be at different times of day. And, I mean, they're looking at different styles of photography and renting equipment and incorporating flashes. And, they're always trying to bring some new element to things to spice it up. And, I mean, Wong's notorious for shooting weekends on film and, a week later coming up with this wild set of photos that are, shot on this camera from 1920. And I mean, all three of them are just highly, highly creative, highly talented people that great, incredible work. And the thing I appreciate about them the most, aside from all this creative stuff, is we have fun doing it. And as it's a grind through the year. Like you're gone a lot, you're away from your family a lot. It's hot. It's, you're staying in hotels and Airbnbs and, there are great times and some venues are better than others and, great experiences, but throughout all of it, all three of them are able to smile and have fun and laugh, and good day, bad day, it's always a pleasure to be around them. And I think that's been a big part of the success of our group and our business is, I don't try to stress anybody out from my side of things, but all three of them are really good about picking each other up and keeping the ball moving when someone's having a bad day or, trying to make a joke or have a good time and laugh. And that's super important to me. I mean, as you know, I'm well versed in sarcasm. I enjoy laughing and having a good time. And they're a big part of making that happen for me every weekend. And I'm super thankful for that.
Two things here, before we say farewell, Brian. So on the topic of sarcasm and fun, I don't remember exactly what it was called, but IndyCar fans did start to notice among a select group of drivers in interviews on NBC or wherever else, press conferences, some strange words would start popping up. And, I forget Joseph's like, slap my behind and slather me in butter or whatever, but right. And
butter my backside, call me a biscuit.
Yeah. Sorry, I might have taken that one a little farther. The pure fun and mischief that's gone on, right? And coming up with kind of the driver word bingo and obviously the Bus Bros was, really successful and kind of revolutionaries, probably in overstating things, but drivers have done their own thing for a while now, but rarely have we seen hey, okay, we're actually going to have a quasi talk show, theme show, something show, and make that a very thematic item that folks can enjoy and get to know Scotty Mack and Newgarden in newer, different ways. Scotty Mack really was the winner, if you want to call it, of the Bus Bros thing, because I loved the guy the moment that I got to know him. And he was one of those people that if you spend a few minutes around him, you love everything he's about. He is truly a bro. But in a professional environment, driving for Roger Penske, not exactly allowed to be his free-flowing self. Given this outlet, though, he became, on top of his driving skill that might have attracted folks, just huge fandom followed here in the States. It really introduced him to American racing, open wheel racing, in a brand new way that has endeared him like so few these days, Brian. That's been one of the things you've done for many years. Joseph's yet another, right? Coming up in the junior open wheel, great kid, fun kid, playful, little introverted though, right? And as more success came his way in IndyCar, might have locked things down a little bit, become a little more, straight-laced. Bus Bros, a great vehicle to let some of that more fun side out. Tell me about that side of what you do, because it's another area I've appreciated with what you do. And there are, some other agencies out there catering to the paddocks you and I play in who are good at doing that as well, of saying, hey, folks know you on camera, driving a race car, spraying champagne, professional setting, but the real you, the quirky you, the funny, whatever side of you, we're going to work to bring that out in kind of a non-overproduced, gimmicky way. We're going to let folks see the real you, good or bad, weird, awkward, or otherwise. I mean, Rossi's a perfect example. And yet folks love it because, if you did something that was scripted and whatnot, folks would go, nah, this is garbage. You're trying to feed me something that isn't real. Tell me about that approach, brother, because it is one of the unique things you've been able to do and succeed at with your clients for a while now.
Yeah, I mean, I think, at its core, the ideas behind whether it's, Bus Bros or a video blog series or, Joseph's Admit One or Jack's You Don't Know Jack, it's ultimately fans want to feel like they're a part of something, right? So they want to feel like they're in a club. You've got, your Prue Day stuff, and that group, highly passionate, love the camaraderie, and everybody wants to feel like they're a part of something or on the, part of an inside joke and things like that. And that's where I think those things kind of came from. Bus Bros in particular, none of us knew what it was going to be. Like, we harebrained idea, let's do this show. We had no format, shot the first episode, sent it to Penske PR to make sure that we weren't going to all three lose our jobs on the back end of it. The response we got was, it's a little long and I don't understand it. And my response was, well, neither do we. So we'll see what happens here. And so we posted it, and it, turned into this thing. And, I think it was just kind of this unique scenario. Like, I don't think I could recreate it again if someone put a gun to my head and said, you've got to create the new version of this with two other guys. It just happened that the three of us worked really well together, got along very well, had very similar senses of humor, and just basically spent a lot of time talking trash in a group chat. And that was what informed the show moving forward. And it was fun because it, allowed both of them to kind of step outside the race car and step away from, being the shining examples of IndyCar drivers, and showcase their personalities, and allowed Josef to pull back out of some of the personality that he, tightened up a little bit when he moved over to Penske, and show the fun side that I knew was in there, and the fun loving guy that he is. And it allowed Scott to be the absolute weapon that he is. My favorite thing about Scott is, people ask me always, how do you get him to wear the inflatables, or how do you get him to do this, or how do you get him to do that? It takes no convincing. You just say hey, and he's like, yep, okay. He doesn't even push back. There's no question. There were so many things we were going to do that we didn't do, that I sent the idea to him, and he was like, I love it, let's do it. And then when we got time to do it, I was like, this is a bad idea, we should not do this. But he was just so willing to jump in and do all of it. And it was really just kind of this perfect storm scenario with the three of us, and particularly with those two, that, created this unique content. But it comes back to what I said earlier, which is, for all of it to be successful, or for any of it to be successful, the guys have to be, or the guys or girls or whoever, the subject of the video, they have to be authentic, and they have to be themselves, because particularly in this day and age, with how everybody consumes media and how much media is thrown at people, it is really easy to see through, a facade and scripted things and things that are fake. And, Rossi's a perfect example. The guy's authentic. The person you see on TV is the Alexander Rossi away from TV. He is himself all the time. And I love that about him. And I think that's why people like him and Scott and Josef and, Graham Rahal and those guys have all built up big followings and big fan bases, is because they are unapologetically themselves at all times. And sometimes, it may rub people the wrong way here and there, but that authenticity is what endears people to drivers, and, subsequently their content and video series and Instagram accounts and things like that. It's just that they are themselves all the time.
The awkward pause with Alexander Rossi. Let's close on this, brother. So you mentioned you're continuing under a new name, different name, one that evokes fine distillation of spirits, highly spirited digital content by and large. You have the same great team behind you, in front of you, alongside of you. You have a bunch of great ongoing clients. You looking to grow and expand? You looking to hold on to what you got and just kind of perfect that? And you're in the first year is under this new solo-ish venture, post dream, I should say. Are you building out anything at your base of operations to do anything new and interesting? What do you see when you look to 2024?
Yeah, I mean, growth is always the name of the game, right? So we're pushing to, get new clients. I'm very lucky in that the people I've worked with in the past, are staying on and going to be a part of our program and continue to work with us. And, we've got some fun, new, exciting stuff. We're working with Graham's new Moto America team. So
Graham Rahal?
Yes, Graham Rahal, Rahal Ducati Moto. We're going to do some cool stuff with their motorcycle team, which, it's been the last time I was around motorcycle racing was when MotoGP came to the Speedway, which has been quite a while. So that's an exciting new development for us. And I think probably the biggest piece and the biggest development for us is we are going to have a studio space in Indianapolis. We're going to have about a 1,400 square foot studio space in Indy, excuse me, that'll have, a flush mounted rotating floor so that, we can do some really wild and crazy stuff with race cars or motorcycles or performance cars or, whatever it may be. It's kind of a unique situation here in Indianapolis, despite the fact that there's obviously a lot of car-based and motorsports-based industries and businesses here. There isn't really a studio space that's able to support those industries the way that you might see in a Los Angeles or other parts of the country. So it puts us in a pretty cool position where we're going to have some space that I think will be pretty highly sought after by those groups, and it obviously allows us to do some really creative stuff for our clients and in a space that hasn't existed before. So Stillhouse Studio is going to be hopefully a really big deal here in Indianapolis in July when it launches, and it's going to be fun.
Happy for you, brother. Truly, when I first started to hear about this, I'm like, you know what? I love it. What you and Josef did and created together was excellent, and just love the timing. He's obviously, only gone upwards, having great success in his life and career. Seeing you taking this in a familiar, but also adding some new layers to what you're doing, and also under a new name is really excellent. I would expect we'll see some of the other folks in the same content creation game, whether it's Mike Kitchell and whatnot at Catalyst 317 or the Co-Forces and such. There aren't a ton, but there's a couple of houses like yours who take care of the paddock. I know what Matt Cleary and the Sunday group, they, similar range of offerings, maybe more on the written and PR side, but there's a number of great little houses who most fans don't really know too much about, but they see the byproduct of their work constantly and might be interested to learn that if they've become a fan of a name the driver, name the team in new ways or different ways through that content that's being created, like folks like you and some of the others that I mentioned who are the drivers behind this. And so it's just so cool to see sport is only getting better, more popular and growing because of folks like you and all the rest that I mentioned. So congratulations, man. And I'm sure I'll be seeing you and the team here before too long, probably at Daytona, and then all over the place with IndyCar and IMSA and whatever else you guys might be getting into.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you, for having me on here and allowing me to talk about this. You've always been a sounding board and a support for me and a big proponent of mine, which I appreciate a lot. I've been very lucky to have a lot of people that have been vocal in supporting me, and I appreciate that out of you.